Emperor Drake paced across the grand imperial chamber, his boots clicking against the polished marble floor. The morning light streamed through tall crystal windows, catching on his golden crown and casting scattered rainbows across the walls. But the Emperor's face showed no joy. Deep lines creased his forehead as he stared at the report in his trembling hands. "Another nursery destroyed, Your Majesty," said General Tom, standing at attention. His uniform bore several small burn marks. "That's the third one this month." Drake sighed and looked out the window at his vast empire. 12 star systems, hundreds of planets, billions of loyal subjects. All ruled with wisdom and strength for over 3 decades. He had faced rebellions, negotiated peace treaties with hostile alien races, and even survived 2 assassination attempts. But nothing had prepared him for his current crisis: 5 baby dragons. The royal dragons weren't ordinary pets. For thousands of years they had been symbols of imperial power. Adult dragons served as both guardians and advisors to the throne, their intelligence nearly matching that of the most brilliant scientists in the empire. They could breathe fire hot enough to melt spacecraft hulls, teleport through solid matter, and sense danger from light years away. But baby dragons? They were a completely different story. "Show me the security footage," Drake ordered, slumping into his throne. A hologram appeared in the center of the room. 5 small dragons, each no bigger than a house cat, zoomed around what had once been a beautiful nursery. The green one hiccuped, sending a jet of flame that ignited a curtain. The blue one teleported repeatedly, appearing inside drawers and cabinets, pulling everything out onto the floor. The red one was spinning in circles, creating a small tornado that lifted furniture into the air. The purple one had somehow turned the water in a small fountain into jelly. And the golden one, the smallest of all, was simply sitting in the middle of the chaos, watching with innocent eyes while occasionally making all the lights flicker. "Where's the babysitter?" Drake asked. The general adjusted his collar. "That's, her." He pointed to what Drake had assumed was a pile of blankets in the corner. The blankets moved, revealing a terrified alien woman with 4 arms, all of which were covering her head. "That's the 7th babysitter this week," General Tom said. "She's from the warrior planet Krell. Their species can wrestle giant moon bears and survive in toxic atmospheres." She lasted. He checked his watch. 43 minutes. Drake rubbed his temples. The stability of the entire empire depends on these dragons. If they don't learn to control their abilities, they could cause interplanetary incidents when they're older. The situation was indeed dire. Royal dragons bonded with the imperial family for life. They grew to become not just symbols but actual sources of imperial power. Adult dragons could shield entire planets from invasion with their protective abilities. They helped maintain the peace across all 12 systems. Without properly raised dragons, the empire would appear weak, vulnerable. "We've tried everything, Your Majesty," said Royal Advisor Betty, entering the chamber with a stack of files. Her normally perfect hair looked frazzled, with several singed patches. "The best childcare specialists from every planet. The telepathic nannies from Mindoria. Even those fireproof guardians from the lava moons." Drake shook his head. "What about the military academy trainers? They can handle the toughest recruits in the galaxy." Betty winced. "They quit after day 2. Said they'd rather face a black hole than another day with the dragonlings." The hologram continued playing. Now the baby dragons had formed a circle, combining their powers to create what appeared to be a miniature rain cloud that poured sticky honey onto the remains of the furniture. "Your Majesty," General Tom said carefully, "there is one option we haven't tried." Drake raised an eyebrow. "I'm willing to consider anything at this point." "Humans, sir." The throne room fell silent. Humans were newcomers to the galactic community. Their home system was in a distant arm of the galaxy, and most imperial citizens viewed them as primitive, fragile creatures. Their technology was centuries behind, and they possessed no special physical abilities. "Humans?" Drake echoed. "What could they possibly offer that our best specialists couldn't?" Betty cleared her throat. "According to our intelligence, they have unusual methods for raising their young. Their children can be quite difficult, yet they manage without telepathy, armored skin, or any special powers." Drake watched as the hologram showed the green dragonling teleporting directly through a wall, disappearing from the nursery entirely. Alarms began blaring. The other 4 dragons looked at each other, then teleported after their sibling. "Where did they go?" Drake asked, standing up in alarm. A communication officer rushed into the room. "Your Majesty, the dragonlings have appeared in the main kitchen. They're eating all the desserts prepared for tonight's diplomatic banquet." Drake closed his eyes, imagining the 12 system ambassadors arriving to find no dessert and possibly no kitchen. The Empire's reputation hung by a thread, all because he couldn't control 5 baby dragons. "Find me a human," he ordered. "Find me the best human childcare specialist in the galaxy. And find them fast." Word of the Imperial Dragon crisis spread quickly throughout the 12 systems. Emperor Drake's call for childcare specialists reached the furthest corners of the galaxy, promising fame, fortune, and the eternal gratitude of the throne to anyone who could tame the 5 unruly dragonlings. The first to arrive were the reptilian nursemaids from the swamp planet Mire. They had scaly skin and natural resistance to heat, making them seemingly perfect candidates. Their leader, a tall female with emerald scales named Liz, bowed confidently before the Emperor. "Your Majesty, my team has raised the fire-breathing swamp lizards of our homeworld for generations. These little ones will be no challenge." 6 hours later, the palace medical wing was filled with reptilians nursing burned tails and singed crests. Liz's confident smile had vanished, replaced by a 1,000-yard stare. They work together," she whispered to the palace doctor. "The red one distracted us while the others set up a trap. They're only babies, how did they plan that?" The next specialists were the telepathic Minders of Mindoria, beings with large, bulbous heads and 6 fingers on each hand. They communicated primarily through thought and had successfully raised the most dangerous psychic creatures in the known universe. "Physical restraints are primitive," their leader Jack told the Emperor with a gentle smile. "We will simply guide their young minds toward proper behavior." 3 days later, all 12 Minders were confined to dark, soundproof rooms, suffering from what their medical expert called the worst psychic backlash in recorded history. "Their thoughts," Jack mumbled, pressing ice packs to his temples. "So many thoughts at once. Colors I've never seen. Songs that haven't been written yet. Math problems that solve themselves backwards." He grabbed the Emperor's robe with trembling hands. "Did you know the blue one can see into alternate timelines when he hiccups?" The rumors began spreading throughout the palace, then to the capital city, then across all 12 systems. The Imperial Dragonlings were cursed. They weren't normal babies, they were chaotic forces disguised as cute animals. "Perhaps we should keep them in stasis until they mature," suggested Royal Advisor Betty during an emergency council meeting. "Impossible," said the Imperial scientist Pat. "Their metabolisms would cause them to age in reverse. We'd end up with, well, I'm not entirely sure what we'd end up with, but the math suggests it would be catastrophic." Emperor Drake watched from his throne as his advisors argued. Dark circles had formed under his eyes. The dragons had now destroyed 5 nurseries, 2 kitchens, a ballroom, and somehow managed to redecorate the Imperial Portrait Gallery so that every painting showed the subjects wearing funny hats. "What about the fire dancers of the burning moons?" Drake asked, interrupting the debate. "They're literally made of flame. The dragonlings can't possibly hurt them." Everyone agreed this was the most logical solution. The fire dancers arrived in special containment suits that allowed them to maintain their flame form while protecting the surroundings. They were tall, elegant beings composed entirely of living fire, with centuries of experience handling the most volatile elements in the universe. "Your Majesty," their leader Ben bowed, his flame body flickering with confidence. "We have danced in the hearts of dying stars. These little ones will be a delightful challenge." The fire dancers lasted an entire week, longer than any previous specialists. For a brief moment, hope returned to the Imperial Palace. Then one morning, palace guards found all 7 fire dancers frozen solid in the nursery. Not extinguished, which would have been expected, but somehow transformed into beautiful ice sculptures, still conscious and able to communicate by blinking their frozen flame eyes in code. "How is this even possible?" Emperor Drake asked as technicians used special heat lamps to carefully thaw the dancers. "Dragons breathe fire, not ice." Ben, partially thawed, managed to whisper, They asked us about snowmen. We didn't know what snowmen were." They seemed disappointed, then they looked at each other, and the Emperor called another emergency meeting. The situation was becoming dire. Diplomatic functions had been postponed. 3 allied systems had sent concerned messages, wondering if the Empire was stable. Rumors of cursed Imperial offspring had reached potential enemies, who were now testing Imperial borders. "We've tried everyone," sighed General Tom, reviewing a long list of failed specialists. "The anti-gravity nannies of Neptune, the shape-shifting tutors of Morphia, even the quantum babysitters who exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. There must be someone," Drake insisted, pounding his fist on the table. "Somewhere in this vast galaxy, Someone must be able to handle 5 baby dragons. A junior advisor named Joe, who rarely spoke at meetings, cleared his throat. Your Majesty, there is one species we haven't tried. The council room fell silent. Humans, Joe said quietly. The word hung in the air like an unwelcome odor. Several advisors laughed nervously. Humans? Royal Advisor Betty scoffed. Those fragile creatures from that backwater solar system? They can barely handle space travel without getting sick. They have no scales, no psychic abilities, no elemental powers, added General Tom. What could they possibly do that our finest specialists couldn't? Emperor Drake raised his hand for silence, then turned to Joe. Why humans? Joe straightened his shoulders. They have something unique, Your Majesty. They call it childcare experience. They raise their young without any special abilities at all. And they've been doing it successfully for thousands of years. Drake stroked his chin thoughtfully. The Empire was running out of options. The dragonlings were growing stronger each day. Find me a human, he ordered. The best one they have. The Imperial spaceport buzzed with activity as ships from across the 12 systems arrived and departed in carefully choreographed patterns. But today, all eyes were on a small, unremarkable transport vessel from the human colony on Proxima Centauri B. That's it? That's the human ship? Asked Royal Advisor Betty, squinting through her digital binoculars. It looks like a flying lunchbox. General Tom nodded. Humans don't go in for flashy designs. Practical to a fault, that species. A hush fell over the welcoming committee as the ship's door hissed open. Palace officials, royal guards, and curious staff members all strained to catch their first glimpse of the Empire's last hope. Amy Wilson stepped onto Imperial soil with a worn blue duffel bag slung over her shoulder. She was of average height for a human, with brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore what appeared to be some kind of uniform, blue pants and a matching top with colorful cartoon animals printed on it. Nothing about her suggested special powers or extraordinary abilities. Welcome to the Imperial Center, said Royal Advisor Betty, trying to mask her disappointment. I am Royal Advisor Betty, and this is General Tom. We expected more humans. Amy shook their hands firmly. Just me, I'm afraid. I'm Amy Wilson, pediatric nurse from New Hope Colony. 15 years of experience with the most difficult cases in the Proxima Centauri system. General Tom raised an eyebrow. And they sent just you? Not a team of specialists? Not your military? Amy smiled. When it comes to children, sometimes less is more. Now, I understand you have 5 little dragons who need some help? As they led her toward the palace, court officials whispered among themselves. Several began placing bets on how long the human would last. 20 credits says she runs screaming within 2 hours, said a tall official with blue skin. I'll give her 4 hours, countered another. Humans are stubborn. 1 day maximum, said the palace security chief. Remember how long the fire dancers lasted? This human doesn't even have natural defenses. Amy pretended not to hear them. She'd faced skepticism before. Back on the colony, nobody had believed she could handle the Anderson triplets, the 3-year-olds who had dismantled an entire hydroponic bay and reprogrammed the colony's weather system to make it snow inside the medical wing. Emperor Drake met them in the throne room, looking exhausted and hopeful. Miss Wilson, thank you for coming. I've been told humans have a special way with young ones. Amy bowed respectfully. Every child is unique, Your Majesty. Even dragon children. Before I meet them, I'd like to learn everything I can about them. Do you have information about dragon physiology, developmental milestones, typical behaviors at this age? The Emperor looked surprised. Well, yes, but I'll also need their daily schedules, feeding records, sleep patterns, and any observations about what triggers their more destructive behaviors. Grand Vizier Frank, who had remained silent until now, let out a dismissive laugh. The most advanced minds in 12 systems couldn't control these dragons, and you want paperwork? Amy met his gaze calmly. Knowledge is power, Grand Vizier. I need to understand who I'm working with. Primitive methodology, he muttered, but Emperor Drake overruled him. Get her everything she asks for. Amy spent the entire day reviewing dragon biology texts, development charts, and security footage of previous incidents. She took careful notes in a small book, occasionally asking questions that surprised the Imperial scholars with their insight. Do dragons imprint on caretakers? She asked. Yes, but only after they decide the caretaker is worthy, replied the Imperial dragon expert. How do adult dragons communicate with each other? Through a combination of telepathy, body language, and flame patterns. And how are baby dragons taught to communicate? The expert paused. Well, adult dragons just know what the babies need. Amy nodded thoughtfully. And who's been communicating with these babies since they hatched? No one really. Their parents are on diplomatic missions across the galaxy. The next morning, Amy requested to observe the dragonlings from a viewing area before actually entering their new nursery. Palace staff had constructed the 6th nursery of the month, this one reinforced with the strongest materials in the Empire. The 5 baby dragons zoomed around the space, climbing on furniture, sneezing small flames, and occasionally disappearing through walls only to reappear somewhere else. From the safety of the observation deck, palace officials pointed out each dragon's particular skills. The red one controls wind, the blue one manipulates water, the green one seems connected to plant life, the purple one affects technology, and the golden one? Well, we're not entirely sure what the golden one does, but strange things happen around him. Amy watched silently for hours, taking notes. The officials grew bored and wandered away, but she remained, studying every interaction, every pattern. They'll destroy the new nursery by nightfall, predicted General Tom as lunchtime approached. Are you ready to meet them, or do you need more time hiding up here? I'm not hiding, Amy replied without taking her eyes off the dragons. I'm listening. They're not talking, the general said. Yes, they are. Amy pointed as the red dragon knocked over a vase, then looked toward the door. See? He's saying, pay attention to me. And the purple one keeps turning the lights on and off when the blue one gets too excited. She's trying to calm him down. The Grand Vizier scoffed. Preposterous. They're babies creating random chaos. Amy finally turned to face the Imperial officials. No chaos is truly random. These dragonlings aren't being difficult. They're trying to communicate in the only way they know how. Nobody's taught them proper ways to express their needs, so they're using their abilities instead. She packed up her notebook and headed for the nursery door. I'm ready to meet them now. Wait, called Emperor Drake. Don't you want armor? A shield? At least a flame-retardant suit. Amy smiled. No need for any of that. I'm just going to talk with them. As she walked into the nursery alone, the betting pool among the palace staff reached record levels. Not a single bet gave her more than 6 hours. The Imperial officials held their breath as Amy stepped into the nursery. Through the viewing window, they watched as all 5 dragonlings immediately stopped their activities and turned to stare at the human. The red one fluttered its wings, creating a small whirlwind that knocked over a chair. The blue one's scales rippled with changing colors. The green one's tail twitched nervously. The purple one sparked slightly. And the golden one simply tilted its head, curious. Hello there, Amy said softly, kneeling down to be at their eye level. My name is Amy. I'm here to help. For a tense moment, nobody moved. Then the golden dragonling took a tentative step forward, sniffing the air. She's going to get torched, whispered a guard. But Amy remained perfectly still, maintaining eye contact with the golden dragon. After what seemed like forever, the tiny creature chirped and bounded toward her, stopping just short of her knees. Well, hello to you too, Amy said with a smile. By evening, palace staff were shocked to find both Amy and the nursery still intact. By the next morning, when Amy requested supplies to implement her plan, the Emperor himself rushed to approve everything. Whatever she wants, get it immediately, he ordered. For the next 3 days, Amy barely left the nursery. Palace workers delivered stacks of colorful materials, special fabrics, and various tools according to her detailed specifications. The betting pool shifted from how quickly she would quit to whether she'd survive the week. On the morning of the 4th day, Emperor Drake and his advisors were invited to observe Amy's new system in action. I should warn you, Amy said as she led them to the observation deck, what I'm doing might seem simple compared to your advanced methods. But sometimes the simplest approaches work best. Inside the nursery, the officials were surprised to see colorful charts on the walls with different faces showing various emotions. Happy, sad, angry, scared, tired, hungry. Dragons can't read, scoffed the Grand Vizier. They don't need to read, Amy replied. They need to recognize and point. Watch. As if on cue, the blue dragonling began to twitch and spark slightly. Before, this would have been the prelude to a water explosion that would flood the entire room. But Amy calmly pointed to the wall chart. Are you feeling something blue? Can you show me? To everyone's amazement, the little dragon flew to the chart and tapped a claw against the excited face. You're feeling excited? That's wonderful. Let's use your excitement toy. Amy handed the dragon what looked like a ball made of spongy material. The dragonling immediately breathed a stream of water into it. Instead of creating a flood, the ball absorbed the water, growing slightly larger but containing the liquid completely. The material is super absorbent, Amy explained to the astonished officials. It can hold up to 50 times its weight in liquid. When Blue feels excited and needs to express it through water, the ball gives him a safe outlet. She had created similar tools for each dragon. The red one had a special wind tunnel toy that channeled air currents into amusing patterns rather than destructive whirlwinds. The green one had a terrarium where it could rapidly grow and shape plants without destroying palace property. The purple one had a simple technological interface that responded to its energy surges by creating light shows. These are just temporary measures, Amy explained. The goal isn't to suppress their natural abilities, but to channel them positively while they learn control. Most impressive was how she had transformed the dragon's teleportation habit from a security nightmare into a structured activity. She had created a game with colorful hoops placed around the nursery at various heights. Ready for teleport tag? Amy asked the dragonlings, who all chirped excitedly. She tossed a soft ball to the golden dragon, who caught it, teleported through the nearest hoop, and reappeared on the other side before tossing the ball to the green dragon, who did the same with another hoop. Before, they were teleporting randomly because they could, because it was fun and because it got a big reaction, Amy explained. Now they have a constructive outlet for the same ability. The Imperial officials watched in stunned silence as the dragons played without a single destructive incident. But how did you get them to listen to you in the first place? Asked General Tom. Even our telepaths couldn't communicate with them. Amy smiled. Consistency and boundaries. I never raised my voice, but I never backed down either. When the red one threw a tantrum yesterday and started a fire, I didn't panic or scold. I simply said, we don't set fires to get attention, put out the flames with an extinguisher, and then showed him his emotion chart. After identifying he was feeling frustrated, I gave him an appropriate outlet for that feeling. The most revolutionary aspect of Amy's approach was her schedule system. She had created a large visual timetable with pictures representing different activities throughout the day: playtime, mealtime, nap time, learning time, outdoor time. Dragons, like children, thrive on routine, she explained. Much of their chaos came from not knowing what to expect next. Now they always know, and it helps them feel secure. Emperor Drake couldn't believe his eyes when nap time arrived, and all 5 dragonlings obediently went to their specially designed sleep nests without protest. The golden one even yawned adorably, curling its tail around itself before dozing off. They're actually sleeping? Betty whispered in awe. Of course they are, Amy said. They're just babies. They need about 14 hours of sleep daily according to the dragon development texts. Without proper rest, they become overtired, which leads to more emotional outbursts and less control over their abilities. Within a week, reports of dragon destruction had completely ceased. Palace staff who had lost the betting pool began asking Amy for advice on their own children. Even the Grand Vizier was spotted taking notes during one of her demonstrations. The secret, Amy told a group of amazed officials, isn't controlling them. It's teaching them to control themselves by understanding their own needs and feelings. Dragons are intelligent creatures. They just need the right tools to express themselves appropriately. As the Emperor watched the once chaotic dragonlings line up in an orderly fashion for their afternoon snack, each waiting their turn without a single fireball or random teleportation, he realized that the human approach, so simple yet so effective, might have applications far beyond the nursery. 6 months after Amy Wilson first set foot in the Imperial Palace, the annual Empire Day celebrations began with an unexpected addition to the traditional ceremony. Following the military parade and diplomatic processions, Emperor Drake himself stepped onto the grand balcony overlooking the capital city's central plaza. At his side stood Amy, still wearing her practical uniform with cartoon animals, though now complemented by a small imperial medallion. Behind them, arranged in perfect formation, the 5 royal dragonlings sat proudly. Citizens of the 12 systems, the Emperor's voice boomed across the plaza, I present to you the future guardians of our empire. At a subtle hand signal from Amy, the dragonlings took flight in perfect synchronization. The crowd gasped as the 5 young dragons, now twice the size they'd been when Amy arrived, performed an elaborate aerial dance. The red one created gentle wind patterns that carried flower petals across the plaza. The blue one formed shimmering water shapes that caught the sunlight. The green one sprinkled seeds that instantly bloomed into colorful flowers wherever they landed. The purple one generated a dazzling light show that danced between buildings. And the golden one, now revealed to possess the power to enhance the abilities of others, created a golden glow around his siblings, making their display even more spectacular. Not a single building caught fire. No one got wet. Nothing exploded. The imperial crowds roared with approval, many openly weeping at the beauty of the display. Parents lifted children onto shoulders for a better view. Even the stoic royal guards were seen smiling. 3 cheers for the dragons, someone shouted. 3 cheers for the human, added another voice. Soon the entire plaza was chanting Amy's name. That evening, at the imperial banquet, Amy found herself seated in the place of honor beside the emperor, a position traditionally reserved for the most valued imperial advisor. Ambassadors from all 12 systems lined up to meet her, many bringing their own troublesome offspring in hopes of a quick consultation. "My daughter can dissolve solid matter when she throws tantrums," whispered the ambassador from the mineral planet Crystallis. "Could we schedule a session? My triplets have developed telekinesis but only use it to steal sweets from the kitchen," confided another diplomat. "Perhaps you have a chart for that?" Amy's success with the imperial dragonlings had spread throughout the empire like wildfire. Palace staff had secretly recorded her methods and shared them with friends and family. Soon, parents across the 12 systems were creating emotion charts and special toys based on Amy's designs. "Your approach has implications far beyond childcare," Emperor Drake told her as they watched dignitaries dancing beneath floating lights. "The same principles of communication, emotional recognition, and appropriate boundaries could transform our diplomatic relations." Indeed, the Imperial Diplomatic Corps had already begun implementing modified versions of Amy's techniques. Interspecies conflicts that had persisted for generations were being resolved through improved communication tools. The emotion charts, scaled up and adapted for adult use, now hung in every Imperial embassy throughout the galaxy. 2 weeks after Empire Day, Emperor Drake made a stunning announcement: the establishment of the Imperial Childcare Academy, with Amy Wilson appointed as its first director. Human adaptability and emotional intelligence, traits our empire previously considered weaknesses, have proven to be profound strengths, Drake declared during the Academy's groundbreaking ceremony. Sometimes the ability to connect, to observe patterns, and to respond with creativity proves more valuable than any natural armor or elemental power. The Academy, built on palace grounds near the Dragonlings Nursery, quickly became the most prestigious educational institution in the empire. Species from hundreds of worlds sent their brightest minds to learn the human approach to childcare and development. Amy insisted on keeping classes small and hands-on. Students worked directly with children of various species, learning to identify universal patterns in behavior while respecting biological and cultural differences. "The goal isn't to make every child the same," she explained to her first class of eager students. "The goal is to help each child become the best version of themselves." The most popular course at the Academy was Dragon Management 101, where students observed Amy working with the Imperial Dragonlings. The once feared babies had become the pride of the palace, their abilities now controlled and purposeful. They attended diplomatic functions without incident, helped tend the Imperial gardens with their unique powers, and even assisted palace security by patrolling the grounds during their daily flight exercises. Humanity's standing in the galactic community transformed virtually overnight. Previously viewed as fragile newcomers with primitive technology, humans were now sought after throughout the 12 systems. Human educators commanded top salaries. Human diplomatic consultants advised on the most delicate interspecies negotiations. Human childcare specialists became status symbols among the elite of every world. It turns out, a popular Imperial newscaster commented, that surviving on a planet without scales, telepathy, or elemental powers forces one to develop other skills, like patience, observation, and creative problem-solving. 6 Imperial ambassadors were recalled and replaced with human diplomats. Military academies revised their training to include courses on human psychology and emotional intelligence. The Imperial University created an entire department dedicated to human perspectives. As for Amy Wilson, she remained remarkably unchanged by her newfound fame. She still wore her practical uniform with cartoon animals. She still carried her worn blue duffel bag. And she still began each day by sitting with the dragonlings on the nursery floor, asking them how they felt and listening, truly listening, to their answers. "The greatest lesson humans can teach the galaxy," she told a journalist who asked about her success, "is that sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who kneels down to listen to the smallest voice."